Hello, everybody. I am Kimberly Hall with UT-TSU Extension in Rutherford County. Today, we're going to talk about these beautiful structures right here. They go by a lot of different names. So what is this? It can potentially be called tons of different things. Ornamental pond, ornamental water garden, fish garden, backyard pond, koi pond, and many other various terms that you may hear from your neighbors or friends or across the world. So let's break these down a little bit. What's ornamental garden versus water garden? An ornamental pond, and that pond is the key word there, contains both fish and plants. Whereas if we're talking just a water garden, with garden kind of being the key word there, it's only going to contain plants. So remember, pond, fish and plants, garden, only plants. So ornamental ponds. Ornamental ponds are a landscaping feature that incorporates water, aquatic plants, and in some cases, ornamental or native fish. We can have great variance in size, uh, whether they're simple or complex, and they're going to contain some sort of living ecosystem within the feature. If we look at these two images here, we can see a very, very large scale of ornamental pond on the right-hand side. Looks like it covers quite a large area. And then on the left-hand side, we have like a little corner section of a yard. Not very big at all, just a little bit of a very simple pond. So why do people do these? What is the want? What is the draw for putting in one of these ponds or water gardens? Then we have the aesthetic beauty of it. They like the way it looks. Sometimes it is the sound. They'll put a waterfall or a fountain in it, and it's the sound of that water rustling. They have a green thumb. They have a green thumb. Maybe they have a love of a water type uh, feature and they want to be able to incorporate the two together. Something new. Maybe they've been into gardening and they just wanted to try something new. Attraction of wildlife. Having that water feature will attract different types of wildlife to the area. Fish viewing, and then adding value and beauty to the home. So where do we see these? These are seen all over, indoor and outdoor. Here's two pictures of different indoor type ponds. They can also be indoor and outdoor, where they have where the fish can come in, the fish can go out as well. Backyards, parks, zoos, businesses, they can be seen in restaurants and hotels as well. So where do we get started on a koi pond? And that's what we're going to focus on predominantly today is koi ponds, fish type ponds. So we're going to start out by choosing a location. When we choose a location, obviously we want it close to our home. We want it close to our home so we can enjoy it. We can supervise children and pets. Observation in case of predators. You see that little raccoon there. They would obviously love to be able to get in and get your fish. And a reduced expense for pipes, electrical equipment, and pumping. Remember, you are going to have an electrical source to be able to run your fountains and that type of stuff. It should be expected to have at least a 10-year lifespan. That's something to really take note of. You should be expected to have at least a 10-year lifespan of this pond. Where not to go. Do not build above gas, water, sewer, or electrical lines. Make for sure prior to beginning to build, you're going to contact your utility company. They will come out and flag where all those lines are. Do not place directly under a tree. Those roots can lead to a lot of problems. As those roots grow, the ground shifts, that type of thing, you can cause cracks within your pond. If you have those tree roots, that's going to require some excavation and that type of stuff. And then you still need to worry about regrowth. Plus, those leaves can foul the water, clog filters, make cleaning more of a hassle. We need to make for sure not to interfere with surface water drainage from storm runoff or be placed where water will collect. We do not want to interfere with that natural flow. We need to look at the sunlight of our location. We want a minimum of 5 to 6 hours per day, and that's so photosynthesis and growth of periphyton can take place. Those aquatic plants that need these daylight hours, this sunlight, there's going to allow those aquatic plants to introduce oxygen into the fish. You may be wondering, what is periphyton? That's going to be a green to reddish brown film of algae and bacteria that grows on stable surfaces. It's going to promote water clarity by removing excess nutrients and food for insect larvae, which then in turn is going to be food for our fish. We do want to avoid direct sunlight at midday. The reason we want to avoid that is as excessive high water temperatures can be very detrimental to our fish and our plants, which will then in turn stress and weaken our immune systems. We want to have some shade in there for our fish. That can be a range of things. So it could be external features such as rocks, decorative type items, floatable plants such as our lilies, that type of thing. So planning. Planning is a very, very important aspect of our koi ponds. We want to maximize our personal enjoyment. We want to make for sure maintenance is going to be as easy as possible for us, and that we're going to support the biological performance and ecology of the pond. Make sure you're in the know. Check to make sure you do not need any permits, whether that be from zoning boards, homeowners associations, or local governmental departments. Insurance. Check with your insurance companies. Certain insurance companies are going to consider pools deeper than 18 inches an attractive nuisance liability issue. So make for sure that you check with your insurance company. You want to contact a professional pool builder or plumbing contractor to see what is needed, and also you need to know what your soil type is, so you know what type of a situation, what type of a pond your ground is going to hold, if there's anything specific you're going to need to do for it. Layout. A lot of times you want to start small. Whenever you start designing these, they can get very expensive very fast. But also remember, whenever you're designing this, most do regret not building larger. So make a layout, start small, know where your pipes, your filters, your fountains, your lights, all your heater, how is that going to be concealed? What will the design be? Also, you want to allow for 1 to 3 foot on each side for liner burial and landscaping. Once you have all this, you might want to increase in size depending on finances and area in which you're going to put it. Depth, it's going to vary based on climate, overwintering management strategies, design of the main pool, that type of thing. 18 to 24 inches with sections of 3 to 5 foot deep if you want to resist winter freezing, cool retreat for fish, allow the predators, allow fish to be able to get away from predators, that type of deal. Construction. When we start construction, we need it to be level, 2/3 below ground, and that's going to allow it to be cool in the summer or warm in the winter. So we want that section to be 2/3 below ground. A tiered approach, 2 to 3 tiers, typically 12 inches wide. That's going to help keep debris from flowing towards the bottom. That tiered system is. You want to cover the drain with mesh or plastic. The reason you want to help cover that drain with mesh or plastic is to keep your fish from getting stuck and allow for other water type items to pass through. A bottom slope of at least 1% to help drain. We want to fill the water gradually to allow that pressure to equalize as we're filling that. So some different materials. Let's talk about materials as far as like liners and that type of thing. We have an earthen or quote unquote mud pond. This is going to be native soil. It's a simple hole dug in the ground. It's inexpensive, but the water is seldom clear. If you look at the photo here on the slide, that water is very murky. Of course, you can still see the fish when they're up at the top, but the water is not very clear. It may be more susceptible to algae blooms, seepage, and nuisance species or predators. Should be built in high clay content type soils and contain a drain or standpipe in case of flooding. We want to make sure we have that drain or standpipe so that if we do have a flooding type issue, that water is allowed to drain to where all of our we are not losing all of our fish. Rigid or flexible liners. These are going to be preformed rigid liners. They're going to be above or in the ground. And whenever you place them in the ground, you're going to place in soil and backfill. You can also use stone or masonry to conceal these. Flexible liners are going to be used to line the excavated hole. Range and durability and lifespan, but they are a little bit less expensive. Concrete or fiberglass. Concrete or fiberglass. One thing I want to mention really fast on those flexible liners is those are going to be sheets of PVC, polyethylene, or EPDM rubber. That's what those flexible liners are going to be. Concrete or fiberglass is going to be durable, long lasting. Drains and lines are going to be molded. It's a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive. The most common is probably going to be the EPDM sheeting, just due to the flexibility, ability to conform, the chemical inertness, and resistance to puncturing in UV light. So the flexible liners, more specifically the EPDM sheeting, is the most common. Here's some photos of some preformed rigid plastic liners. You can see they come in all different shapes and sizes. And here's some different images of the flexible liners. Once again, like I said, you have a little bit more flexibility, can make it the size and shape that you want, that type of thing. Concrete or fiberglass, picture here. All right, so water. Let's talk about water sources. We can use city water that is dechlorinated, well water, and occasionally we can use rainwater as well. We want to avoid surface water from creeks or existing ponds. That's going to bring bad stuff in, stuff that we don't want in, especially in our fish populations. It will also bring in species that we don't want in our pond, that type of thing. Water quality is essential. We want to know those concerning factors. Our main concerning factors are going to be dissolved oxygen, nutrients, algae, ammonia, nitrate, pH, alkalinity, hardness, and different contaminants. Those 4 items that are starred, there is going to be a water test available for those. So let's start dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is going to be the measurement of the amount of oxygen in the pond. That's going to range from 0 to 20 parts per million. It's going to vary based on agitation, the number of fish and plants, the time of the day, or the time of year, and the temperature. We want to remember that fish are going to stress at levels lower than 3 parts per million and begin to die at 2 parts per million. Those mechanical aerators can help maintain that dissolved oxygen levels. So mechanical aerators, fountains, that type of stuff. Nutrients. Nutrients are going to enter from runoff, from improper building. We want to minimize runoff as much as we can. Vascular plants are going to remove these nutrients rapidly, and they should help suppress algae growth as well. It's also going to be made up of fish feed, waste, decomposition of leaves, organic material, and fertilizers. Algae, we have free floating. That's going to be our most common, or clingy. This is caused by overstocking, overfeeding, and or over-fertilizing. That's what causes the growth of algae within your pond. Increase the number of plants or use biofilters to remove excess nutrients, or replace or flush water to dilute and disperse. Periodic blooms are part of the normal cycle. So fall to early spring, you are going to have a periodic bloom, and that is normal. Ammonia and nitrite. Major nitrogen waste of fish. It is going to be toxic to fish, but are usually removed by plants and used as nutrients for growth. So if you have your plants in there, they're going to use the ammonia and the nitrite as nutrients for growth. Typically, fish are overfed, plants are over-fertilized, or rapid decomposition of organic matter happens whenever you have a problem. Certain types of bacteria decompose or nitrify ammonium into nitrite and can become hazardous. You want to remove this, or you can remove excess by adding plants, using a biofiltration system, flushing, or adding bacterial water conditioners. pH, we want to remember that pH is neutral at 7, higher is basic, lower is acidic. It's going to fluctuate daily. It should cycle from about 6.5 to 9. If outside this range, buffers need to be added to protect your fish in your pond. Alkalinity measures of the bases in the water and so is related to pH. It's going to vary in range. 20 parts per million or greater is considered adequate. 40 parts per million or greater to maintain fish health and reproduction. So for our fish health, remember 40 parts per million. And this can be increased by adding carbonates. Hardness is a measure of the calcium and magnesium concentration. Ferrous iron may contribute significantly to groundwater hardness levels. The acceptable range here is greater than 5 parts per million, 20 parts per million or greater to maintain fish health and reproduction. Contaminants or pollutants, pesticides, and then a simple bioassay bait fish can be conducted to make for sure that you don't have any contaminants. You can use a bait fish, such as flathead minnows, 24 hours with no direct sunlight. If you have no dust, that equals no contaminants. They will need some type of a circulation, though. Just remember that. Filtration, you need water to circulation to avoid stagnation. Remove solid materials and to biologically degrade and detoxify dissolved materials. So not all will need a filtration system. Ponds with large number of fish and modest fish should not require filtration. Plants act as active biological filters. We want to remember that. And there are mechanical and biological filtration systems. All right, so let's talk about fish now. Types of fish used. Most common are koi and goldfish. They do belong to the carp family. And of course, koi, a lot of you are probably used to seeing the big koi at the zoos and stuff like that. Brightly colored, large fish. Koi are selectively bred for unique color, scale, and fin characteristics. Goldfish are not uncommon for feral goldfish to revert back to olive gray coloration. So we need to remember that. Koi are selectively bred to stay bright. Goldfish, if they're out in the open, out in a pond type situation, they can revert back to olive gray kind of watercolor. Koi require more room, grow quite large, and have long lifespans, whereas goldfish don't typically grow quite as large. Fish stocking, we want to make for sure that we do not overstock. We need to remember that these fish do grow rapidly. The carrying capacity of your pond is going to depend on the size, the volume, the temperature, sunlight, aeration, and filtration system. Your initial amount of fish that you put into the pond should not equal your carrying capacity. We need to remember that 1 pound of final weight of fish per 100 gallons of water. So 1 pound final weight of fish per 100 gallons of water. And when I say final weight, that's going to mean when they're completely done growing at the end of that life cycle. So acclimating, we want to float those transport bags filled a third to half full of water, 10 to 15 minutes. So whether you have these fish shipped in or you go and purchase them at a local store, they will be sent home with you in a plastic transport bag. We want to float that bag in the water in the pond that they're going to be in for 10 to 15 minutes. Make sure that bag stays out of direct sunlight, as that bag will get really hot and that water inside the bag will get very hot very fast. Slowly splash water from the pond into the bag until the volume has doubled when you open up that bag. And then we're going to want to net fish to release them into the pond, not just dump them into the pond. If you're adding to an existing pond that already has fish in it, you do want to quarantine the new fish to make for sure that they are healthy and not bringing any diseases into your pond. Okay, feeding fish. Overfeeding of fish is very, very, very common. We want to remember that fish are fed for growth or maintenance. 3% of body weight is going to promote growth. 1% of body weight is going to be just the maintenance level. Outdoor environment only supplying supplemental feed, so they will eat algae, zooplankton, insect larvae, and plants. These are going to be, we want our feed to be rich in protein at about 28% protein. Remember that fish are cold-blooded, so they do not have to be fed each day. And we also want to remember that we want them to consume this feed quickly, and any excess should be netted out. So we want them to consume for about 5 minutes, and after about 15 minutes, excess the netted out. And also remember that different species of fish may need different food. So if you've got multiple species within the pond, that needs to be considered. When we look at this koi feeding temperatures chart, we want to make for sure that we reduce or cease in cold weather. If you see that, if temperatures are below 50, do not feed, and above 80, we do not feed. Feed very, very, very sparingly if the water temperature is over 85. Warm temperatures and plus high feeding can cause oxygen depletion. Hot summer, in those very, very hot summer months, or hot summer days, we want to feed early to mid-morning. Those fish have time to eat, and everything is done and out of there by the time that it gets really hot and the water temperature starts to rise. Controlling reproduction, many fish eggs and fry may be eaten by larger fish. Only a few can equal overpopulation though. So even though quite a few may be eaten, we want to remember that only a few can cause overpopulation. You can do some type of a biological control. You can add one sunfish, such as a bluegill. They're aggressive enough to eat all fish eggs and fry in most water gardens. And so then that will control your overpopulation problem. Sickness is preceded by stress. We want to monitor our fish. We want to look for signs of stress and disease. Reduced or no feeding. If they are not wanting to eat, then that's a sign. Piping, flashing, whirling, shredded fins, visible sores or discoloration, that's all can be a problem. If you see them up at the top of the water when you're not feeding, just kind of naturally doing like this image here on the slide, then you need to start figuring out what's going on. If there's a problem with oxygen and that type of thing. Okay, let's talk about aquatic plants. Aquatic plants are going to be important. They're going to produce oxygen, they're going to filter the water, and they're going to provide shade and hiding areas. So not only are they going to give your fish somewhere to get in the warmer weather, to get to some cooler water, get to some shade, but also hide from predators. You need to understand the maintenance levels of the plants that you're putting in the water. Plants that float or closely shade the water should cover 50 to 75% of the water surface. So if they float or closely shade, 50 to 75%. And enclosures may be used to protect plants from being eaten. So they do make aquatic plant enclosures. One thing we need to remember, and as we wrap this up today, we need to remember, do not release exotic fish or plants into the wild. By no means, if you're at a situation where you can no longer maintain your koi pond, make for sure that you don't go just release those in a lake or a pond or a creek or something like that. Same with the plants. So that's all I have for today. I thank you all for tuning in. And if you have any questions, you can email me at khall58@utk.edu. Thank you. Have a good day.